My name is Samantha Reed. I am 39 years old, and after 7 years of complete silence, my family left me 43 voicemails in a single night. They weren't calling because they missed me. They needed my signature. My mother called first, then my sister Melissa, then my brother Eric, then Dad. 7 years earlier, I had walked out of my parents' house on Thanksgiving with one suitcase and $200. My grandmother had died a few months before that. Before she passed away, she told me she had set aside $80,000 for me. After her funeral, the money disappeared. Mom said Grandma had changed her mind. Melissa suddenly had enough money to open her own business, and Dad refused to answer my questions. When I kept asking what had happened, Mom stopped talking about the money and started talking about me. She told the family I was jealous of Melissa. Then she called me dramatic. Eventually, she started telling people I was unstable, so I left. Nobody followed me, and for 7 years, nobody called. Then Melissa searched my name online and discovered that I had built a successful career and a comfortable life without any of them. That same night, my phone started ringing. Her first voicemail was simple. Samantha, I need you to sign a statement before Monday. Please call me. Monday was only 3 days away. Mom called next. Your sister could lose everything. Whatever happened years ago needs to stay in the past. Then I reached Dad's message. His voice sounded older than I remembered. Samantha, don't sign anything. He paused before continuing. Your grandmother really did leave you that money. I sat completely still. For 7 years, my family had told me I was wrong. They had convinced everyone around them that grief had made me suspicious and bitter. Now Dad had confirmed the one thing they had all denied. Grandma's money had existed. Before I tell you what happened next, if you're enjoying this story so far, please take a second to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It truly helps this channel reach more people who love emotional family stories like these. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? I'm curious to read your thoughts. Just after midnight, the 43rd voicemail arrived. It was Melissa again, but this time she wasn't angry. She sounded scared. The bank wants proof that you gave me Grandma's money voluntarily. If you don't confirm it before Monday, they're going to investigate the original transfer. I listened to her message again. The original transfer. Until that moment, I didn't even know there had been a transfer with my name attached to it. 5 minutes later, an email arrived from an attorney. He said he was reviewing old documents connected to Grandma's estate and believed I needed to see something immediately. There was one attachment. I opened it. According to the document, I had voluntarily given up my entire $80,000 inheritance 7 years earlier. It also said I had allowed the money to be used for Melissa's business. My full name appeared at the bottom. Underneath it was my signature. For a few seconds, I simply stared at it. The signature looked almost perfect. But I had never signed that document. I had never agreed to give Melissa my inheritance, and I had never authorized anyone to make that decision for me. Someone in my family had forged my name. Now, after 7 years of silence, they needed me to make that lie legal before Monday. I didn't call anyone back that night. Instead, I saved the document and forwarded a copy to a second email account. After 7 years of being told I remembered things wrong, I wasn't going to lose the first real piece of evidence I had ever seen. The next morning, I called the attorney who had emailed me. His name was Daniel Foster. The first thing he asked was whether I recognized the document. I recognize my name, I said, and whoever signed it did a good job copying my signature. But I had never seen that document before last night. Daniel explained why it had suddenly appeared. Melissa was applying for a large business loan to expand her store. As part of the process, the lender reviewed the money she had used to open her original business 7 years earlier. That led them back to Grandma Evelyn's estate. Melissa provided the document showing that I had voluntarily given up my inheritance. The lender tried to verify it. That was when everything started falling apart. The law firm named on the document had never prepared it. Daniel had worked with Grandma before her death, and his office still had copies of some of her original records. According to those records, Grandma had set aside $80,000 for one person. Me. I closed my eyes when he said it. For 7 years, I had wondered whether I misunderstood Grandma. There were nights when I actually convinced myself that maybe my family had been right. Maybe grief had affected my memory. Maybe Grandma really had changed her mind. Maybe I had destroyed my relationship with my family over money that was never mine. Now I knew better. Grandma and I had been close during the last years of her life. I helped her organize bills, appointments, and paperwork whenever she needed it. I never expected anything in return. Then one afternoon, after she sold a small rental property, she told me she had set aside $80,000 for me. My first reaction was to refuse. Dad's hardware store was struggling. Melissa wanted to start a business, and Eric had his own responsibilities. Grandma listened until I finished. Then she told me that being the child who asked for the least didn't mean I should always receive the least. I never forgot those words. After Grandma died, I waited until after the funeral before asking Mom about the money. She told me Grandma had changed her mind. I asked to see the paperwork. Mom became angry. She said I was turning Grandma's death into an argument about money. Melissa told me the money had been redirected because Grandma wanted it used for something productive. Her business. Dad refused to discuss it. For months, I tried to let it go. Then Thanksgiving came. During dinner, Melissa announced that she had finally signed the lease for her store. Everyone congratulated her. I asked one question: did Grandma's money pay for it? The entire table went quiet. Melissa looked at Mom before answering. That look told me more than her words ever could. Mom accused me of being jealous of my sister. Eric told me I was ruining Thanksgiving, and Melissa started crying. Then I looked at Dad. Did Grandma leave that money to me? He stared at his plate. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He just sat there. That was when I knew. Mom told me I had become impossible since Grandma died. Then she said that if I couldn't be happy for my own sister, maybe I shouldn't be there. So I left. What I didn't know that night was that my inheritance had already been emptied. Daniel had the bank records. 4 days after Grandma's funeral, $60,000 had been transferred out. It didn't go to Melissa, it went to Dad. Several weeks later, the remaining $20,000 went to Melissa. Every dollar Grandma had left me was gone. I called Dad. This time, I didn't let him hide behind silence. Where did the $60,000 go? He didn't pretend he didn't know what I meant. His hardware store had been close to failing. He owed suppliers, and the bank wouldn't extend any more credit. Mom suggested using my inheritance temporarily. Dad agreed. They told themselves they would replace it before I ever found out. They never did. Did Grandma give you permission? No. Did I? Dad paused before answering. No. I let that answer sit between us. Then I asked him who had forged my signature. Dad said he didn't know. I almost ended the call. Then he spoke again. Samantha, I took the money. I'm not going to lie about that anymore. But I never saw that document until this week. For once, I believed him. Dad had accepted money he knew wasn't his, but Mom had handled the estate paperwork. He hadn't asked how she made the transfer possible because asking questions might have forced him to admit what they were doing. That didn't make him innocent. It only meant the forged signature belonged to someone else. Daniel already had a lead. There was a witness name beneath my signature, Patricia Hale. I knew her immediately. She had been one of Mom's closest friends for years. More importantly, Patricia had worked at Grandma's bank when my inheritance disappeared. Daniel contacted her that morning. At first, she refused to discuss the document. Then he told her I could prove I had been away for work when it was supposedly signed. Patricia changed her mind. She agreed to meet us the following morning, but she had one condition. My mother could not know. That evening, Mom called again. This time, I answered. She immediately started talking about Patricia. She'll say anything to protect herself, Samantha. You can't trust her. I hadn't mentioned Patricia. I didn't say a word. Mom suddenly stopped talking. She knew what she had just revealed. Then she changed the subject. She told me Dad could lose his business if I kept digging. Melissa could lose her expansion. People could lose their jobs, and the entire family could be dragged through something humiliating. Everyone had something to lose. Everyone except Samantha. At least that was how Mom still saw it. Finally, I asked her a question. What did I lose? She hesitated. Then she gave me the same answer she had been giving herself for 7 years. You're doing well now, you have a good career, you don't need that money. I almost laughed. This wasn't about whether I needed $80,000 anymore. It was about someone deciding they had the right to take it. And now there was a forged signature carrying my name. I asked her directly, "Did you sign my name?" "No." The answer came too quickly. Then Mom told me I didn't understand what things had been like back then. Dad had been desperate. Melissa finally had an opportunity, and the family was under enormous pressure. Then she said something that made everything else disappear. "You were always the one who could handle things." I didn't answer. After we hung up, I kept thinking about that sentence. Maybe this had never started with hatred. Maybe it hadn't even started with the money. Maybe my family had simply spent so many years watching me handle things that they eventually decided I should have to. The next morning, I met Daniel at his office. Patricia was already there. She had an old folder sitting on the table in front of her. The moment I walked in, she started crying. She apologized. I sat across from her. I didn't tell her it was okay. I only asked one question. Who forged my signature? Patricia looked down at the folder. She said my mother had brought her the document already signed. That wasn't what I had asked. Did you see her sign my name? Patricia shook her head. No. Then how do you know she did it? Her hands tightened around the folder. Patricia said that the night before the transfer, Mom had sat at her kitchen table with an old birthday card I had signed beside her. I felt my stomach tighten. Patricia continued. Mom had practiced my signature on sheets of paper, over and over again. I couldn't speak. Then Patricia told me what Mom had said when she begged her to stop. It was the same sentence Mom had used with everyone else. Samantha will be fine. Sitting there 7 years later, I finally understood that those 4 words had cost me far more than $80,000. Patricia didn't ask me to forgive her. That helped. She told me exactly what had happened. Years earlier, she had broken bank policy while helping a relative with a loan. No money had been stolen, but the violation could have cost her job. Mom knew about it. When Patricia refused to help with my inheritance, Mom reminded her what she could lose. Patricia gave in. She knew the signature wasn't mine. She knew Grandma had left the money to me, and she helped process the transfer anyway. I asked why she had waited 7 years to tell the truth. Patricia lowered her eyes and said she had been ashamed and afraid. I understood the fear, but understanding it didn't erase what she had done. Then I asked about the folder. Patricia pushed it across the table. Several weeks before Grandma died, she had become worried about what might happen after her death. Mom had already been pressuring Grandma to change the inheritance. Grandma refused. So she made copies of the important documents and asked Patricia to keep them somewhere safe. I opened the folder. The first pages were copies of Grandma's original instructions. The $80,000 was clearly designated for me. There was nothing vague about it. Then I found a handwritten list. Grandma had recorded the major financial help she had given our family over the previous decade. Dad had received several loans for his hardware store. Melissa had received help with school, a car, and early expenses for her business. Eric had borrowed money once and repaid most of it. Beside my name was the smallest amount. At the bottom, Grandma had written that the $80,000 for Samantha corrected an imbalance. It did not create one. I read the sentence twice. For 7 years, Mom had told everyone that Grandma had unfairly favored me. The opposite was true. Grandma had been trying to make things fair. Patricia reached into the folder again and handed me another page. It was a copy of a letter Mom had sent Grandma shortly before she died. Most of it was about Dad's failing business. Then Mom wrote about Melissa and the opportunity she had to open her store. Finally, she mentioned me. She wrote that Samantha had a stable career, no children depending on her, and had always been independent. She believed I would be fine without the money. Grandma had circled that last sentence. Beside it, she had written 4 words. Being capable is not consent. I stopped reading. Those 4 words explained something I had never been able to put into words myself. My family didn't think I deserved less because I had failed. They thought they could give me less because I would survive it. Whenever someone else needed help, I was expected to understand. Whenever plans changed, I was expected to adjust. And whenever there wasn't enough for everyone, I was the safest person to disappoint. I had spent years thinking my independence earned their respect. Instead, They had turned it into permission. Daniel asked Patricia if she was willing to give a formal statement about everything she had witnessed. She agreed. That gave us what we needed. Grandma's original instructions showed where the money was supposed to go, while the bank records showed where it actually went. My work records proved I couldn't have signed the transfer document. Dad had admitted receiving $60,000, and Patricia could explain how my signature appeared on paperwork I had never seen. Monday was now 1 day away. That afternoon, Melissa called. I answered. She immediately asked whether I had spoken to Patricia. I told her I had. For a moment, Melissa said nothing. Then I asked how much she had known 7 years earlier. She insisted Mom had told her Grandma changed the plan. According to Melissa, she believed the remaining $20,000 had been given to her legally. I asked whether she really believed that. She said she did, at first. Those last 2 words mattered. I reminded her of Thanksgiving. I had asked directly whether Grandma's money had paid for her store, and Melissa had looked at Mom before answering. I asked her why. Her voice became quieter. She admitted that by then, she had started wondering whether Mom had told her the whole truth. But she never asked to see the documents. She never asked Dad, and she never contacted Grandma's attorney. She didn't want to know. Her store depended on the answer being the one she wanted. Then Melissa admitted something I wasn't expecting. She had been relieved when I left. Once I was gone, nobody asked questions about Grandma's money anymore. Mom stopped defending the decision. Dad stopped looking uncomfortable, and Melissa could focus on opening her store. My absence had made their lives easier. I appreciated the honesty, even though it hurt. Melissa said she hadn't known about the forged signature. I believed her. But she had known enough to ask questions. She simply chose not to. Then she returned to the reason she had called. She needed my signature before Monday. Without it, the lender would withdraw from her expansion. Melissa had already paid deposits and ordered inventory. She had also promised several employees new positions. She told me the entire expansion could collapse because of one missing signature. For a few seconds, I felt myself slipping back into an old habit. I started calculating everyone else's losses. Melissa could lose her expansion. Employees could lose opportunities. Dad might face questions about the money he received, and Mom could face consequences for the forged document. I knew how to make all of those problems smaller. I only had to sign. That was what made the decision difficult. Saying no is easy when you don't care what happens to the other person. I still cared. But caring about someone didn't mean I had to protect them from every consequence. I looked down at Grandma's handwriting again. Being capable is not consent. I told Melissa I would not sign the statement. She begged me to reconsider. Then fear turned into anger. She said I could save everything with one signature. I told her that was exactly how this whole mess had started. One signature that someone decided they had the right to use. Melissa went quiet. I ended the call. Sunday evening, someone knocked on my door. It was Mom. Dad stood several steps behind her. I hadn't given either of them my address. Melissa had. I considered closing the door, but instead, I let them inside. Mom began talking before she even sat down. She said Patricia was protecting herself, and that Grandma hadn't understood how close Dad's business was to failing. Then she reminded me that the money had kept the store alive and helped Melissa build a business. I listened until she finished. Then I placed a copy of her letter to Grandma on the table. Mom recognized it immediately. Her face changed. I pointed to the sentence Grandma had circled, the one saying I would be fine without the money. I asked Mom whether she had written it. She admitted she had. Then I placed Grandma's handwritten note beside it. Being capable is not consent. Mom looked away. I asked her why she had practiced my signature at Patricia's kitchen table. Dad turned toward her. His reaction told me he hadn't known about that part. He asked Mom if she had signed my name. Mom told him to stay out of it. For once, Dad didn't. He asked again. Mom tried to explain instead. She said the family had been desperate. Dad's business was failing, their bills were piling up, and Melissa finally had a real opportunity. I asked her one more time. Did you sign my name? Mom finally said yes. Dad closed his eyes. For 7 years, I had imagined what I would feel if I ever heard the truth. I expected anger, Instead, I felt strangely calm. Mom said she had only been trying to save the family. I reminded her that it wasn't her money. She said families were supposed to help one another. I asked why nobody had asked me if I wanted to help. She didn't answer. Dad did. He said they hadn't asked because they knew I would say no. The room became completely quiet. Dad looked at me and admitted that taking the $60,000 had been his choice too. Mom had suggested it, but he had accepted the money. He knew Grandma intended it for me. He knew I hadn't agreed. And when I started asking questions, he stayed silent because telling the truth would have exposed what he had done. Then Dad turned toward Mom. He told her Samantha hadn't broken the family. They had. Mom sat down. I didn't care about winning an argument anymore. There was only one question I still needed answered. I asked Mom why I was always the one expected to understand. Why did Dad get rescued? Why did Melissa get protected? Why did everyone else's emergency become something I was expected to absorb? Mom said it was because I was stronger. I told her I already knew I could handle it. What I wanted to know was why she believed I should have to. Mom looked at me for a long time. Then she finally answered, because it was easier. 3 words. That was the truth underneath everything. It was easier to disappoint me because I wouldn't fall apart. It was easier to take my money because I had a job. It was easier to call me unstable than admit what they had done. And once I left, it was easier to let 7 years pass than make the first call. For years, I had wondered why I hadn't been worth protecting. Now I understood. They believed I would survive without it. Mom reached toward me. I moved my hand away. I wasn't trying to punish her. I simply wasn't going to comfort her for finally admitting what she had done to me. Then Mom asked what would happen on Monday. I told her nothing would happen from me. I would not sign Melissa's statement. I would not lie to the lender, and I would not help make a forged document look legitimate. Daniel would begin the legal process to correct Grandma's estate records. Mom said Melissa could lose everything. I told her Melissa might lose an expansion built on paperwork that wasn't true. That wasn't the same as losing everything. Dad stood to leave. Before walking out, he apologized. I believed he meant it, but an apology couldn't erase 7 years. It could only decide what happened next. Monday morning, Melissa sent one final message asking me to reconsider. I didn't respond. A few hours later, another message arrived. Her lender had withdrawn from the expansion. I didn't celebrate, and I didn't feel victorious. I went back to work. For the first time in my life, I had allowed a family emergency to remain with the people who created it. That afternoon, Daniel began the legal process to correct Grandma's estate records. The truth was finally moving somewhere Mom couldn't control. Into bank records, formal statements, documents, and evidence. Then Daniel called me again. While reviewing Patricia's folder, he had found a sealed envelope, hidden between Grandma's papers. My name was written across the front. It wasn't another financial document or another account. It was a personal letter from Grandma. Across the back, she had written that it should be given to Samantha only after she learned the truth about her mother. Daniel asked whether I wanted him to open it. I said no. For 7 years, other people had been making decisions in my name. This one would be mine. I picked up Grandma's letter the next morning and waited until I was home before opening it. For 7 years, I had wanted proof that my family had lied to me. Now I had the bank records, Patricia's statement, Dad's admission, and Mom's confession. But Grandma's letter wasn't about the money. It was about me. She wrote that she had watched the same pattern in our family for years. Melissa needed reassurance whenever something went wrong. Eric often needed help cleaning up his own mistakes. And Dad avoided problems until someone else stepped in to solve them. Then there was me. I became the dependable daughter. I worked, paid my own bills, and rarely asked for help. Whenever the family had to choose who could wait, who could adjust, or who could go without something, they chose me. Grandma wrote that Mom had always been proud of my independence, but over time, something changed. Mom needed to feel necessary. Dad needed her. Melissa needed her. Even Eric often needed her. I didn't. As I became more independent, Mom started treating that independence like rejection. Then I reached the sentence that made me stop reading. Grandma wrote that my mother might love me, but love did not give her the right to decide what I was allowed to lose. I put the letter down. That was exactly what Mom had done. She decided Dad couldn't lose his business. She decided Melissa couldn't lose her opportunity, and she decided the family couldn't lose its financial stability. Then she decided I could lose $80,000. Later, she decided I could lose my reputation too, all because I would be fine. Grandma ended the letter with a warning. She hoped I would never confuse forgiveness with permission. I folded the letter and returned it to the envelope. For the first time since the 43 voicemails arrived, I stopped asking what my family deserved. I asked myself what I wanted. I wanted Grandma's estate corrected. I wanted the forged document removed from the record. And I wanted the money accounted for. But I didn't want revenge. I didn't want Dad to lose everything. I didn't want Melissa's employees punished for something they knew nothing about. And I didn't want to spend the next several years fighting simply because I finally had the power to do it. I told Daniel exactly that. The legal process took several months. There were no dramatic courtroom scenes. Most of it happened through meetings, bank records, signed statements, and attorneys. Patricia gave a formal statement explaining her role in the forged transfer. Her actions were referred for a separate review, and Daniel made it clear that whatever happened to her was no longer my responsibility. I was glad to leave it that way. For once, I didn't need to manage someone else's consequences. Dad admitted receiving the $60,000, and Mom stopped denying that she had forged my signature. The old estate records were corrected, and the money my family had taken had to be repaid. Dad couldn't return his share immediately. His hardware store was still open, but it had been struggling for years. Daniel arranged a repayment plan that allowed Dad to sell the business instead of watching it collapse. His longtime manager eventually bought it. Dad kept enough to retire modestly, and the rest went toward what he owed. He called me after the sale was completed. He told me he had spent most of his life believing silence kept the peace. Now he understood that silence could also protect the person doing something wrong. I told him that was exactly what his silence had done. Dad apologized again. Then he said something that mattered more. He didn't expect me to forgive him just because he had finally told the truth. That was the first time I thought we might eventually have some kind of relationship again. We started with short phone calls. They were awkward at first, but they were honest. I preferred that. Eric had his own apology to make. He admitted that believing Mom had been easier than questioning her. If I was unstable, he didn't have to ask why I left. If I was jealous of Melissa, he didn't have to wonder where Grandma's money went. I reminded him that he had been an adult when he posted those things about me. Mom had influenced him, but she hadn't forced him. Eric accepted that. Then he did something I hadn't asked him to do. He removed the old post and wrote a short public correction. He admitted that years earlier he had judged a family member after hearing only one side of a private conflict. He didn't mention my name. He simply said he had been wrong. That meant more to me than another apology. Melissa faced the biggest financial consequences. Her expansion was canceled, but her original store survived. She had to restructure some debt and agree to repay the money she had received from Grandma's estate. At first, she blamed me. She kept reminding me that I had a successful career and didn't need the money anymore. I stopped responding. 4 months later, Melissa asked to meet, and I agreed. She looked tired when she arrived, but she didn't ask me to rescue her. Instead, she admitted something. For years, she had told herself that she built her business alone. Now she knew that wasn't true. Grandma's money had helped her, Mom had helped her, Dad had helped her. And when I left, my silence helped too. Melissa admitted that she had known enough to ask questions 7 years earlier. She simply didn't want answers that might cost her something. That was the apology I had been waiting for, not because she blamed Mom, because she finally didn't. Melissa had been manipulated, but she had also made her own choices. I told her I forgave her. Then she asked whether we could go back to the way things were. I told her no. We could try to build something new, but I wasn't interested in pretending the old relationship had been healthy. She accepted that. We started with occasional messages. For now, that was enough. Mom remained silent for almost 3 months. Then a letter arrived. I recognized her handwriting immediately. I expected explanations about Dad's business, Melissa, the mortgage, and all the reasons she believed she had no other choice. Instead, the letter was only 2 pages. Mom wrote that she had spent months thinking about the question I asked her that Sunday night. Why was I always the one who had to understand? Her answer was the same one she had finally given me that night, but now she understood what it meant. Asking me to understand had been easier than asking everyone else to change. Then she wrote something I never expected from her. She had treated my strength like a resource the family was entitled to use. I read that sentence several times. For once, there was no request for me to understand her side. There was no excuse and no demand for forgiveness. Mom wrote that she finally understood why an apology couldn't return the 7 years we had lost. I put the letter away. I wasn't ready to answer. 2 months later, on my 40th birthday, a card arrived. Mom had written only 2 sentences. She hoped I was happy, and she said I had deserved to be asked what I wanted. That evening, I sent her a short message thanking her for the card. Nothing more. It was enough. The money was eventually restored through the corrected estate and the repayment agreements. I put most of it away. I didn't buy anything dramatic, and I didn't need my family to see what I could afford without them. I had already proved I could survive. I didn't need to keep proving it. What mattered more was what happened after the money was settled. Dad and I continued talking. Eric and I slowly began rebuilding our relationship. Melissa and I stayed in occasional contact. Mom and I remained the most distant. Maybe that will change someday. Maybe it won't. I no longer measure healing by whether my family looks whole from the outside. Grandma had warned me not to confuse forgiveness with permission, and it took me years to understand what she meant. I could forgive Dad without pretending his silence hadn't hurt me. I could forgive Melissa without giving her the same place in my life she once had. I could understand Eric without excusing what he had done, and I could still love Mom without allowing her to make decisions for me. My family called me 43 times because they needed my signature. They never got it. What they got instead was the truth. For most of my life, I had been proud of how much I could carry for the people I loved. Grandma taught me something better. Being capable is not consent. I can forgive my family. I can even love them. But my choices, my boundaries, and my name belong to me. And nobody signs those away again. Thank you for staying with me until the end of my story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe because I share a brand new family story here every single day. And if you're not ready to leave yet, open the next story on your screen. I have a feeling it will stay with you just as long.